Well, good afternoon, Mavericks. It's a pleasure to see everyone out today. Really appreciate you taking the time. We are going to get started here very shortly. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Nathan Hankinson, and I am the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement. I'm excited to be a part of this series as UNO graduate and lifelong Omaha native, and it is my privilege to serve the UNO community. I've been in my role now for about 4.5 months, almost 5, and really enjoying it. Just really appreciate the opportunity to be able to serve UNO alumni and students, and always here as a resource from that standpoint. With that being said, a few quick notes before we get started with today's webinar. First, all our visitors today do not show up on anyone's Zoom screen, so please don't worry about being seen. However, no, we are always open to adapting webinar structures to further enhance our events. So anyone interested in future sessions with more interactivity or visibility, please just respond in the live chat with the word camera. In addition to that, we also do have a poll that is posted, and please feel free to answer those questions if you have that ability as an attendee. If you have any issues with that, you can also just list that in the chat. We do have a staff member that can kind of manage that. But we'd love to get your feedback and make sure that we can tailor these sessions moving forward to what you want and what you need. Secondly, in the spirit of engaging our webinar attendees, we are encouraging everyone here to participate in the live chat. So it can be anything from a question to a comment. Anyone that does post in the live chat will be entered into a raffle to win a UNO alumni t-shirt, which will be mailed to you. So the more you comment and ask questions, the better the opportunity to win. And then thirdly, if anyone in attendance today would like to receive a UNO alumni pin, like the one you will see with my shared screen here. One sec. If you would like to receive that pin, just please simply respond to the email that you received confirming your registration, and we will send that your way. Okay, perfect. And today, today it is my pleasure to welcome Shane Kalin, who is a UNO BA graduate and a commercial lender at Northwest Bank. He also has his MBA from the University of Creighton. And today he will give us helpful advice on after college budgeting, proper utilization of employer retirement matches, and general finance advice geared toward young alumni. And I would just say, as a quick side note, I also had him as an instructor when I worked at my previous position as a program planner and director. So I take it firsthand. I've seen him teach in person, and so very lucky to have him here today on the webinar. So with that, Shane, welcome.
Thanks, Nate, and I appreciate the invitation.
Of course. And before I turn the reins over to Shane, please note, as I mentioned earlier, that if you have any questions for him, feel free to put those in the chat box during his presentation if it's fresh on your mind, and we will address those later in the Q&A portion of the webinar towards the end. With that, welcome, Shane. The floor is yours.
Awesome. See if I can figure out how to work Zoom well enough. Back when I was giving all my presentations, they were in person, so I'm going to do my best. Do you have just the PowerPoint, or do you see the presenter's view on right now?
We do see the presenter's view right now.
Okay. Try to do better then.
Good to go now. Yep.
It's on the good screen. Okay, great. Yeah, so, excited to design over financial literacy for the UNO Young Alumni Professional Series. It's a topic I'm pretty passionate about. And, I'm glad that everybody took the time today to, learn a little bit more about it. And I know your schedules are pretty busy. So, just want to introduce myself. I graduated in the class of 2018. I majored in finance, banking, and investments. I had an economics minor with that. Attended Creighton afterwards to get my MBA and my Master of Finance degree. Please don't hold that against me. UNO just didn't have their Master of Finance program yet. Currently work at Northwest Bank as a commercial lender. Worked there for over 7 years now, and it's been a great employer for me and allowing me to work with small business owners and real estate investors in the Omaha community. So that's kind of a little background about me, but I think we just dive right into some financial literacy. The definition is up there. I'm not going to read it word for word for you. That came off the Corporate Finance Institute, but what it really boils down to is to be financially literate, you need to have, ability to budget and manage your money day in and day out. And then when you have excess money, ability to manage your borrowings. So the loans you take out and what you take them out for, and being able to borrow effectively. And then when you have excess money, being able to invest that effectively. And part of the investing side of it is being tax efficient through your investment. So when you combine those four aspects, that kind of encompasses personal financial management. And if you can do those four really, really well, you're generally considered financially illiterate. The statistic at the bottom there, over 66% of the US population is considered financially illiterate. And really that's no fault of anybody's. Most people realize that there isn't really much financial education personally in schools. It's kind of been left up to the parents for a long time. And if a parent is financially illiterate, it's not likely that they're going to be able to teach their kids to be financially literate. So there just hasn't really been a good structure to teach these things for a long time. That's kind of led to the financial illiteracy we see today, and it's a real problem. It really, financial literacy comes from your self-source, learning yourself, and that's just not the best way to teach a topic. But I'm glad that you all attended the webinar today, and maybe helps you get started on your financial literacy journey. Just want to pull out some statistics of why this is important and how the financial literacy has affected our day-to-day lives. Over 56% of the adult population lives paycheck to paycheck, and with that percentage, over half of Americans, it shows that even high income earners can have the problem of living paycheck to paycheck. Living paycheck to paycheck is a really taxing way to live. It's stressful, and it's really detrimental to other aspects of your life. As college students, I think we're very aware of the student loan issue now. 1.5 trillion is just attributable to US student loans. 37,500 is the average borrowed per borrower. And, this really shows that, that it is an issue, and it takes longer for people to get their life started, buy homes, start a business, do other things that they want when they have the student loan debt. Only 18% of Americans could live on emergency savings for 6 months. I think COVID showed us that, it's really important to have emergency savings. Something can come along completely out of your control and really affect your life. And being able to have those emergency savings helps you prepare for those unexpected life events. The retirement issue, almost half of Americans don't have any retirement savings. There's Social Security out there available. But if you plan a retirement on just Social Security, you're going to have a very thin, lean retirement, and it's not going to be great years for you. So it's really important to get those retirement savings. And the best time to save was 10 years ago, and the second best time to save is right now. So, it's just really important to do what you can and start as soon as you can. In the last statistic here, $121,000 median net worth of US households. That accounts for all US households, all age groups. And that's just really a low net worth number. It includes home equity. It includes, any stocks, bonds, real estate holdings you have. It's just a low number. And as individuals become wealthier, their quality of life typically goes and becomes better. So it would be good to see that number slowly climb up. So, I just thought it'd be good to list some things that are important to recent graduates and stuff that might be on the top of your minds. I think paying off student loans is a pretty common one. You come out of school with this debt, and people were really helpful getting you the loans and helping you get through school, but they really weren't helping you on how to pay them off or how to get rid of them now. And so there's a situation where a lot of grads are sitting in where they have student loans and they're not really sure what the next move is for it. I think purchasing a home is another thing pretty important. A lot of people want to eventually own a home, and that's a big thing for recent grads. Saving for retirement might not be as important, but it is still on graduates' minds. Eventually everybody wants to retire, and these are some of the best years. Your 20s and 30s and 40s are some of the best years to save for that retirement, because you have a lot of time for that money to grow. I know our generation is more entrepreneurial, so opening a business is something that a lot of our age group and recent grads want to do. And opening a business takes some capital. So if you're more financially literate, you're going to have the ability to, get that capital and be at a point where you can open, the business that you might want to. And the last one I listed here, desired lifestyle. We all went to college to, get the career that we wanted, potentially increase our income and have a lifestyle that, we kind of pictured when we were younger. So, you want to be able to use your money to live the lifestyle that you want to have. So, I'll move over to the kind of the first topic in financial literacy, which is budgeting. And this is really the powerhouse behind almost everything else. The core of being able to manage money well is being able to budget. And I added a little equation here: income minus expenses equals the money that changes your life. As you expand from, the income you earn and increase it, and if you can keep expenses lower and increase that gap, that's money you can use for anything. That's money you can pay debt down with, invest with, buy trips if you want to, entertainment, and buy a bigger home if that's what you care about. But it really comes down to being able to expand that, to have options to do what you want to do. I put income is simple, expenses are hard here. We all have a pretty good idea of what our income is and how to increase it. We all went to school to get different jobs that likely had higher incomes. We've probably been working in those jobs and know how to negotiate pay raises or take different jobs to increase it. Expenses are quite a bit harder, and we can see that by the statistic of 56% of people living paycheck to paycheck. Clearly, there are high income earners out there that are living paycheck to paycheck because they can't manage their expenses, and their expenses grow as their income grows. So managing expenses is what is really, really hard in budgeting. And, what it really comes down to is aligning your money and not really depriving yourself. A lot of people look at budgeting and think, well, I'm just, going bare bones and I'm only getting the minimums. I'm not going to live my life. I'm going to stick to this very strict regimen. And that's not really it at all. It's about aligning your money and making sure it's going into places that you care about, and making sure you're not flowing money into places you don't really care about. So, I kind of want to put the steps to putting together a budget here. A lot of people think you're supposed to sit down and draft your numbers and then immediately stick to them. And that's kind of the wrong way of going about it. The first thing you should do is spend a couple months of just tracking your expenses. Don't make any changes, but just see what your spending patterns look like right now. Just look and see where your income is going to. Maybe you have, really high, costs in traveling, and you're eating out more than you'd like, and all these different things. Well, it's good that you eventually want to change those, but first you just need to know where your money's going. The second step, you're going to want to calculate your income. And for W-2 wage earners, that's going to be a little easier than people who might be commission-based, but get a good idea of what your income looks like month to month. The third step is listing your desired monthly expenses. So now that you've tracked your expenses and you know where your money is going right now and what your spending habits look like, well, now maybe adjust to what the real desired monthly expenses be. So prioritizing what matters to you. If you love traveling and you just don't really care about, what your house looks like, well, maybe you'd want to list more money into travel expenses, and you don't want to have a large house, so, lower, housing costs. Or if you absolutely love going out to eat, but you don't really care about concerts or things like that, well, maybe put more of your budget to eating out and less for those other entertainment aspects. And then putting pen to paper, just draft your budget, outline the places that you would like your money to flow, and categorize them. So, what is going to be your mortgage and rent expenses? What's going to be your grocery expenses? What's going to be your, out to eat budget? And at least have it on paper and see what you would like to have as your budget. And then continually track and adjust. So it's an ongoing thing. If you have a month, track your expenses and see how well they matched up to your budget. If they weren't good and you realize you're not hitting your budget month in and month out, maybe adjust your budget to something that's more realistic that you'd be able to hit. It's an ongoing thing. If you're continually budgeting and you see, I'm always spending more on groceries every month, but I'm always spending under my dining and eating out categories, we'll adjust those two categories to kind of match what you're actually doing. But once you have your budget, continually ongoing updating it and making it a living, breathing type of thing. So I've added a couple budget resources for you guys here, and I hope the presentation is getting sent out. I think Nathan's sending it to you guys. So the Excel templates, that'll be great if you enjoy Excel for budgeting. They'll have a lot of great templates to start, so you don't have to make one from scratch. But one place I'd maybe suggest taking a look at is You Need a Budget. So this is an online software, and it's really, really handy for people who like using software. So they have an app that you can use on your desktop, on a tablet, on an iPhone, and it's just really, really, for people who like software-based things, it's really going to get you excited about budgeting and make it a little easier for you. There is a monthly cost to it. You do get a free trial period, so that's one thing to consider. But if it's something you think would help you budget, I would definitely encourage you to looking into it. See if I can get back to the PowerPoint. This is my Zoom skills coming back to bite me. Are we back on the PowerPoint, Nathan?
Yep, we're good to go. Yep.
Great. So, once you get a good handle of budgeting and you're able to, have a gap between your income and expenses, and you have extra disposable income month in and month out, we kind of move into the next aspect, which is borrowing, being able to get rid of bad debt, and being cautious with good debt. So you might ask, what makes a debt good? What makes a debt bad? A debt is good if it increases your net worth or increases your future value. A great example is student loans. So when you take out student loans, typically it'll increase your earning power over your lifetime. So in the fact that maybe you borrow $40,000 in student loans, but you increase your earnings $200,000 over your lifetime, well, you've probably increased your future value in that scenario. So it would probably be a good debt at that point. If you purchase a home and you increase net worth through paying down that home, again, probably a good debt. So I've listed some good debts here. Mortgage would be included in good debt. Student loan to an extent, if you borrow $150,000 and you don't increase your earning power, that might get moved over in the bad debt category. Same with an auto loan to an extent. If you get an auto loan for a reasonably priced car at a reasonable interest rate, it could probably be a good debt. But if you borrow for a $100,000 sports car and you get an outrageous rate on that, it's probably going to fall in the bad debt category. A small business loan, if you open a small business and that business is profitable and pays off the debt, it's probably a good debt. In bad debts, probably not surprising, credit card debt, payday loans, excessive auto loans, those debts aren't going to increase your net worth. They're actually going to decrease from them. So, they kind of fall in that bad debt category. So, now you might have debt, you might have some bad debt, and you might just have some good debt, but good debt that you'd like to pay down. So how do you go about that? Well, first and foremost, you just got to look for refinancing options. That's going to be your quickest, easiest fix. If you can get lower rates today, then, that's going to help the problem immediately. So that's going to be your only real quick fix. But after that, to get rid of debt, you just need to pay above minimums within your means. Obviously, if you're paying so much that you can barely live, maybe you scale back the payments you're making. But if you have excess income, consider paying more than minimums, because that's going to help retire that debt quicker. And lastly, consider a debt snowball or a debt avalanche approach. The debt snowball, this is kind of coined by Dave Ramsey. So the way this works is you sort your debt by balances. You pay off the lowest balance first, and then you pay off the next lowest balance, and then the next lowest balance. And it gives you little wins quickly. And so, it energizes you to pay off the next one. So this is kind of psychology based. It's about, getting a win and then getting another win and getting another win. And that motivates you to pay off the next debt. The debt avalanche is more for people who are math based and just want the minimum amount they have to pay back. So, you sort by interest rate on this one, and you pay off your highest interest rate debt first, and then the next highest interest rate, so on and so forth until your debt's paid off. And the way the debt Avalanche works, it ends up lower cost overall. But you got to decide for yourself: am I more psychology based? Do I need those little wins to keep me motivated, or am I more math based? I just want to minimize the number when you're choosing what debt pay down method you'd like to go for. And be cautious with good debt as well. I think an important thing to emphasize to people is what you qualify for does not exactly mean what you can afford. I think a lot of people have heard the term house poor, where you may purchase a home, but you barely have money to furnish it and barely have money to live. You're making your monthly payments, but your other aspects of your life are being affected because you got a mortgage for the highest amount possible. So, I'd maybe encourage you, if you're looking at buying a home, even if you qualify for, say $400,000, consider a smaller house if you're happy with that. If you could be happy living in a $250,000 house, that's probably the better route. Don't just go for the highest amount because you qualify for it. And the same goes for auto loans too. Dealerships will be happy to sell you the car that, the highest priced car you can afford, but consider, getting a car that, you're happy with and you can afford. And then student loans, I think it's probably a little late for a lot of people on this. They're probably already gone through their education. So, but you just need your education to increase your earning power to make student loans a positive debt. So if you're considering a master's program, I'd maybe encourage you to consider, how is this going to change my earning power over my life? And if it really doesn't change my earning power, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but maybe consider different ways of funding it, or being really cautious not to take out too many student loans when you go into that program. And the last is small business loan. If you take out a small business loan, you really need to make sure that business is cash flow positive and becomes profitable. Because eventually we'll have to pay down that debt, but if the business is profitable, that's going to be a really positive debt that can increase your net worth. So I think it'd be good to talk about, how you borrow at the very best rates, which is typically credit score driven. And so these are the aspects that make up your credit score. The biggest component is going to be your payment history. 35% is attributable to that. So that's if I make my payments on time, and I don't miss any payments. The next category that's highest is balances owed. This makes 30% of your credit. So, if you have credit cards that are close to their max and they stay close to their max, this is going to negatively affect it. But if you have lower balances on those credit cards, this category is going to improve it. 15% is your credit history. So how long have you had accounts outstanding? 10% is your credit mix. So do I have credit cards, auto debt, mortgage? Do I have different types of credit? And then the last is new accounts. So how many inquiries have you had? And how many new accounts have you opened? So here's some tips for improving each category. So payment history, just avoid late or missed payments. Just pay your bills on time if you can. Even if it's minimums, it'll help in this category. Just try your very best not to miss any payments or pay them late. Amounts owed. So in this category, pay down debt. And then also consider only using a portion of your credit available on revolving lines, which are your credit cards. So even if you have a credit card that has a $5,000 available balance, try to keep it, to 1,000 or 2,000. Don't use that full 5,000 because it'll affect your score. Length of credit history. So avoid closing accounts, leave them at a $0 balance instead. So, if you've had a credit card that you've been trying to pay off for a long time and you finally get it down to a 0, that's awesome and great. And you should be really proud of yourself. Just don't close that account out, cut up the card, throw it away, but leave the account open. That'll actually help your length of credit history. And then continue living. Obviously, the longer you have credit open, this one will improve. Types of credit, consider opening an installment loan, but only if you have a need for one. Don't go and get a loan just because you want to improve your credit. Again, this category is 10%. It's a small portion of your credit score. So only get a different kind of loan if you really have a need for one. And new credit, minimize credit inquiries. Just open only new accounts if you need them. Don't open a card because the store gives you a 15% discount on what you're buying that day. just really consider opening credit when you really need it. I've added a couple of resources here. So debt.org, this is for, helping people get out of debt and has a lot of great resources. So if it's something, you're in debt right now and you would like to make some progress on it, I'd check them out and see if there's any good resources for you. And then if you want to improve your credit score, there's annualcreditreport.com. You're allowed to pull your credit report from all 3 bureaus for free annually. So if you've never pulled your credit report, I encourage you to go take a look at it and see what it looks like. And if it's not the score you would like, look at some of the areas that you could probably improve from. But I think that's a great resource to be able to see what, credit companies are able to see. So now if you're budgeting, you have a difference between your income and expenses to the point where you have disposable income, you've paid down bad debt, your debt's in a good situation, and you still have excess monies to put somewhere. That's where you kind of move over into investment and putting money into investments. So the definition of an investment is an asset that generates income or appreciation. So either it needs to potentially go up in value or it has to give you income today. I've listed out some different asset classes. I think we're all pretty familiar with cash, so I'm just going to move over to equity. So this is going to be, a slice of ownership in business. It can be you giving money to a startup. It can be you investing in index funds, mutual funds, individual stocks, but you have a slight ownership stake in equity. Moving over to fixed income, that's where you're loaning people money. So if you buy a bond, you're loaning a company money. If you get a certificate of deposit, you're loaning the bank money. Even if you just loan to a friend, you're loaning them money and they're giving you fixed payments to give you your money back. So that's what fixed income is. And then real estate, there's direct or indirect investments. So either you buy a piece of property or you buy a stake in a fund that buys property. And I'm not going to touch into commodities. That's typically reserved for institutional investors. Not a lot of retail investors investing in commodities. So I just want to introduce some things, for the investment side that, you should potentially consider for yourself. I think they're pretty powerful tools. And the first one is a target date fund. And this is for people who just really want a very hands-off approach to their investing. What a target date fund does is, it takes basically all the management responsibility off of the individual investor. And it just has you choose the date that you really want to retire, or you have some significant event where you need the money. And then over time, the fund itself changes its profile and becomes less risky over time. So this is what most people recommend you do over your investing lifestyle, but the fund just does it for you. So you're able to buy just one single fund, choose the date, and then the fund is going to have a diverse group of holdings, and it's going to adjust over time to adjust for risk, as you should over that life cycle. And I added, so this is kind of what a target date fund offering list would look like. You would just look at what retirement date you kind of have picked out. So for me, for example, maybe it's 2060, 40 years from now. It's really hard to think in my mind. That's sad. That's so long from now. But if you look at it, you can see it has substantially higher returns compared to more recent target date funds. And there's a good reason for that, because if you're retiring in 2015, you're going to scale back the risk quite a bit and expect lower returns, but lower risk for losses. When it's all the way out to 2060, you're going to be really aggressive and hope for high returns, but it has more risk for high losses. But these target date funds are just really, really great tools for people who want the simplest, most hands-off approach to have low cost, diverse holdings that will adjust over time. So they're just a really, really great tool for people who don't have the desire to learn a lot more about investments. If you want to be more active than just a single fund, I would encourage you to read the Stock Series by J.L. Collins. This is some of the things he covers: market misconceptions, asset allocation, cost management, tax efficiency, emotion management. It's just the most comprehensive guide I have seen out there. And this is a look at his blog, but he has content that will keep you reading for 20 to 30 hours. And the most comprehensive place I've seen to really get you started on understanding stocks and bonds and investing in general. So if you have a desire to be more active, I would encourage you to go check out his blog there.
We are back, Shane. I do see the presentation.
I always get nervous every time I try to share back to that screen, but you know, and then real estate. So real estate's nothing to just dismiss and say, oh no, I can only go in stocks and bonds. Why would I even consider real estate? If you look at it, real estate makes up almost 57% of global wealth, while the stock market makes up about 18%. So over half the wealth in the world is in real estate. So it's a huge asset class. You know, there's two ways that people typically invest in real estate. It's indirect or direct. So indirect, you can go and you can buy into what's called a real estate investment trust. So you just buy, you know, a little ownership stake in it, and then other people go invest in the real estate for you. So the management is happened by the trust, and all you do is buy that fund. You know, places like Vanguard and Fidelity offer these, and you know, it's just like buying any other mutual fund, except you know, the fund is only focused on real estate. And then direct investment is purchasing a specific equity stake in a property. So, you know, maybe you buy a piece of single family home, a commercial property, an apartment building, but you have the direct piece of property that you know that you purchase. And if you're interested in doing some direct investment in real estate, I would recommend going to Bigger Pockets. So Bigger Pockets is a really cool website, focused, you know, purely around real estate investors. See if I can find it here. Yep. You know, but they have forums where you can interact with other investors. They have education resources, networking for any, you know, person you might need during your investing career, tools like calculators to see what good deals are, ability to find deals. So if you're interested in investing in real estate directly, this is going to be one of the most powerful resources for you. And I suggest you take a look at it. All right. So, you know, once we, you know, are budgeting well, have, you know, differences between our income and expenses. So we have, you know, other income we can spend. We've paid down debt and we know we want to invest. And we kind of identified where we want to invest in. We need to consider what accounts to use to invest. And these are some accounts I would encourage you to consider. So 401k, if you're employed by a for-profit business, 403b, if you're employed by a nonprofit business, Roth and traditional IRAs, health savings account, and 529 college savings plans. And you know what I put here is employer sponsored for 401k. So your employer is going to choose who hosts your 401k plan and what investment offerings they have. IRAs are going to be self-directed, so you choose where you want to open the account out, and you choose exactly which investments you would like in it. Health savings accounts can be either or, and 529 college savings plans are typically self-directed like IRAs. And so you might be asking, why even bother with these? You know, why does an account that I have matter? Well, tax matters quite a bit. You can see in this graph, it's the difference in investment for a $10,000 investment at the same exact return levels, but just one is in a taxable account and one is in a tax advantaged account. You can see there's over $7,000 of difference. You know, the savings that you get on taxes and investments over the life of the investments makes huge differences in the amount of money you have at the end of that investment. So, you know, it really matters to put these investments in tax advantage accounts. I've got a little chart below that shows the tax advantages of each account. So traditional 401k, traditional IRA, when you contribute money into it, it isn't taxed. So it's before any taxes get taken out of your payroll. And as that grows, you don't pay any taxes on any of the growth. When you go to withdraw from those accounts, you do pay taxes at that time. A Roth 401k or a Roth IRA, your taxes are already taken out when you contribute, but they grow tax-free. And then when you go to withdraw them, they are tax-free. 529 savings plans are very similar to Roth, where they grow tax-free and you withdraw tax-free. But that other little shaded check mark, in the state of Nebraska, we're one of the few that allows you to deduct your state income taxes for contributions to 529 savings plans. And then HSA is actually the single most powerful tax advantage accounts. Your contributions are tax-free, your growth is tax-free, withdrawals from that account are tax-free, and you even get a little help on the FICA taxes. So it's actually the most powerful account out there. Where, and then to compare to taxable account, your contributions are taxed, your growth is taxed, and then when you withdraw, typically you're going to have a 10% capital gains tax too. So these tax efficiencies can be the differences between hundreds of thousands of dollars over your investing life. So it's really important to consider them and use them. And I just have a little flow chart for tax efficiency. You might be wondering, well, which account do I contribute to first? Where do I even start? And the thing I put first and foremost is to have 3 to 6 months of emergency expenses saved up in cash equivalent accounts. Before you start contributing to any of these accounts, you should have an emergency fund. Once that emergency fund is filled up, though, you can move on to 401k or 403b to at least contribute enough to get your employer match, because that's close to free money as it gets, and you want to capture that employer match. But once you contribute enough to get the employer match, you should consider moving on to an HSA account because, like I said, that's the most tax advantage account out there. Triple tax benefits. It's important to note, though, that you'll only qualify for one of these if you have a high deductible insurance plan. But if you do qualify for one, they're really powerful as far as the tax side. If you fill up the HSA, consider filling up your IRA contributions. Double tax benefit. You might be asking, well, why is this any better than a 401k? Well, it's because it's self-directed. So you get to choose any of the investments that you want in it versus a 401k. You're kind of captive to what your employer allows you to invest in. And then once that IRA is filled up, you'll go back to your 401k and 403b and fill those all the way up. And then lastly, 529 savings plan. The reason I put this at the bottom is because you should only use one of these when you have a specific person that you're saving for college expenses. That might be yourself, that might be children, but it's got a very specific purpose. So I would wait until you have someone identified that you want to use this plan for. I've added some resources here. It would take a lot of time to cover all the ins and outs of these accounts, but I put links to them. And what I would encourage to maybe look at on these is, what are the income limitations? Some of them you can't contribute to if you make too much money, and what the contribution limits are. So how much money can you contribute to each? But I'd encourage you to maybe click on some of these links and take a look and read a little further on some of these types of accounts. So I know I covered quite a bit of information there. So I thought it'd be nice to put some action steps down, on how you could take away from today and improve on your financial literacy. The one that I think is first and foremost, and I'd like to emphasize the most is, if you don't have one already, make a budget. This is going to be one of the most powerful things to help you be financially successful over your life. Being able to manage your money day in and day out is huge. So if you've never been on a budget, I encourage you to try it, and really give yourself time to be successful in it. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes dedicated work. If you have debt out there, evaluate your debts, consider refinancing and get a pay down strategy in place. It's really rewarding to people to pay off their debts. So, if you get a plan in place, it's going to be a lot easier to pay those off. So, consider evaluating that and get a pay down plan. If you haven't before, check your free credit report. Even if you have great credit, it's still interesting to see, what it looks like and what is on that report. Evaluate investments and decide what you prefer. So maybe you like stocks the most, maybe you just risk adverse and like bonds. Maybe you love directly investing in real estate. Decide what that is and go that route. Maybe read more on target date funds or read J.L. Collins' stock series. I think both that information is going to be really, really good for you. And if you have spare time, it would be positive to read on some of those things. Lastly, just look at your current tax advantage accounts. Consider opening others and consider contributing to them. So, if you have them, but you've never really contributed to them, consider upping your contributions. It's going to be powerful to be tax advantage over your life. And I've added just a couple other resources, you might want to check out. So Ramsey Solutions, Dave Ramsey's been, kind of a guy in the finance world for a really long time. And his programs have worked for a lot of people. I don't personally really identify with what he has, but there's no denying that he has worked for a lot of people. So check it out and see if his program is something that would work well for you. And the last two I put down are some things that I've personally enjoyed quite a bit. There's a community called the FIRE community, and it's financial independence, retire early. And they've kind of come to the thought that retirement really isn't an age, it's a number of assets and income for your life. So a lot of these people have retired in their 20s, 30s, and 40s by limiting their expenses and amassing a good amount of assets. So they're kind of cool reading, and if that's something that interests you, I'd encourage you maybe checking those out as well. But that's really all I have for you guys. I'm happy to take your questions and answer anything you might want to know.
Well, first off, Shane, thank you very much for the presentation. I certainly learned a lot and really appreciate just all the advice. I think I had asked a question earlier in the presentation about credit score, and then you had a great series of slides that covered that very topic. I would say on that point, just to start out there, I am curious, from your sense of being, at a bank with young alumni professionals that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, what would you say is a decent score on credit? 800 I've heard is always, above 800 is great, but what's that buffer zone of when you can start to get pretty good rates for a house for some of those good debts that you talked about?
Sure. I would say usually 750 and above, you're borrowing at close to the best rates. 700 to 750, you're borrowing at good rates. And below 700, you're probably not borrowing at very great rates and would probably want to improve. And if you're below 620, you're probably not in the best credit profile there, and really consider dedicating some time and energy to improving that score.
Thank you. And then we just did have a question come through from Sarah. She asked, are there any financial literacy mentoring programs that you could advise?
I mean, I haven't seen them a lot. The best I've kind of seen is some communities that help. One I'd maybe recommend checking out is the Nebraska FI. So that's the financial independence, kind of community in Nebraska, but, they're really focused on improving your financial lifestyle and kind of supporting each other. But I don't know if I really, off the top of my head, know any specific mentoring programs.
Thank you. And please feel free, everyone, to continue to ask questions. We'd love to have further feedback. I have a few more pre-developed questions that we have here. Just kind of curious in terms of what financial trends are you noticing from the younger generations comparatively to the, maybe some of the older, boomer generations or, baby boomer generations. Just kind of curious that difference. Have there been different financial trends with borrowing, savings, etc.?
Sure. I think like our generation is just willing to think outside the box on how they want their financial picture to be. So, the tried and true always used to be, you buy a house, you pay it down, you put a bunch of money into stocks, and that's how you live your financial picture. I think a lot of millennials are saying, maybe I don't care about home ownership, or maybe my investment style is owning business, or maybe I prefer cryptocurrency or other different styles of investment like that. So I'd say our generation's willing to go on a different path. Which is good too. I think just the core of being able to be financially well off is being able to increase your income and manage your expenses. So, choosing those different paths will still work out for them.
Awesome, thank you. And we did have a question come through from Adam. He says that I am trying to build my real estate portfolio. I would like to build a house as a rental property. What are the best ways to keep costs down, and how to get free quotes from builders, or where to acquire rough estimates? Thank you for the webinar.
Yeah. So I would make the comment that typically a lot of people don't build to rent. The cost of new build is usually so high where the rental rate you're going to get for that is not going to end up servicing the debt you take out on it. Typically rentals are homes that have been around for 10 or 15 years. And if you are going to build to rent, you'd really need to be able to do quite a bit of the work yourself, I would think. And that would be the best way to keep the cost down. But I maybe consider something that's already in existence to start your real estate investments.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the question, Adam. Thanks, Shane, for the response. Appreciate it. And then I guess the other question too, there would be, there's a considerable amount of young alumni that have maybe side businesses or thinking about side businesses if they don't already have that. For that kind of situation, I've certainly done some research in terms of the SEP IRAs and just how that fits into the piece. I know that's a little bit more of a niche market in terms of advice for, but just curious for anyone that is thinking about doing a side business, how does a SEP IRA fit in? If you could just explain that. I know that there were some tax benefits from what I was reading in some of the research in terms of how that would work. Can you have that while also having a Roth IRA?
Sure, I'm not as well versed on that, Nathan. I'll have to apologize.
No worries.
I think that from the top of my head, I believe the contribution limits might be higher for a SEP IRA because you don't have the ability to contribute to a 401k plan. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not as well versed in the SEP IRA space.
Perfect. No worries. I appreciate the insight on all the other questions and the great advice. Let's see if we have something in the chat here. Just a lot of people just said thank you very much. Very informative. This has been very helpful to them. So just want to say kudos to you, Shane. Really appreciate it from that standpoint. At any point, anyone have any other questions? Now's your chance to get direct connection to one of the best that does it. So especially for you now.
And I'd probably mention if anybody has any questions, if there's a way to connect, I'm happy to answer questions if they pop up later on too.
Absolutely. And that would be something if you are interested in asking a question or it pops in your head after this webinar, please feel free to just reach out to me to email or that same email you received, letting us know that you're interested, and we can connect you with Shane from that standpoint via email. So I do have another question that just popped up here. Another question. I have an old 401k from an old employer. Would you recommend withdrawing to pay off good debt to avoid interest charges?
I probably wouldn't recommend something like that. The fee you're going to pay to withdraw that 401k to pay off, good debt that's probably at relatively low interest rates right now. It probably isn't going to be a net positive on that. The only reason I could see for doing it is if you absolutely hate debt and you'll live better mentally and not having debt, maybe do that, but mathematically it's going to work out better to keep that in your 401k. I would mention too, if you have a 401k from an old employer and you no longer work there, I would recommend distributing it into an IRA instead, transferring it into an IRA, because that's going to give you full control over it. And you can choose whatever investments you want in it rather than being limited to those investment funds again. So always consider when you leave an employer to take that 401k and transfer it into your IRA.
And along those lines, Shane, if someone already did have an IRA themselves, whether it was a Roth or a traditional, is that something that does that affect contribution limits? Because I know there are certain contribution limits. Does that transfer over with an exception?
Right. When you move a 401k, you transfer it into your IRA. It doesn't mess up any of your contribution limits.
Okay, perfect. Great question. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Adam. Any other questions, everyone? Oh, perfect. Well, with that, just want to say thanks again, Shane. I really appreciate you being here with us today. It was great information. I learned a lot, certainly. And we do have one more. I love it. I keep the questions rolling. We have time. So no worries, Adam. With the last question here, with commodities, would you prefer paper or physical? Was the question.
It's funny you mentioned that. There's an old story about a commodities trader who was, trading these things, and he forgot to close out a position, and he was literally delivered physical corn, and he didn't really know what to do with that corn. But as far as commodities go, I don't really think a retail investor has a lot of business being in commodities. you know, you're doing a lot of speculation unless you have good information on why corn is going to go higher, oil is going to go lower, which you likely don't have. You know, you're kind of speculating and gambling at that point. So like the only commodity I can really think that a lot of people might have use for is gold, and then kind of crypto falls into that same category. So if you have concerns with how the United States runs its money supply, then those are natural hedges against it, gold and crypto. But you know, I just think commodities should probably be reserved for you know, institutional investors, not retail investors.
Thank you, Shane, and thanks for that question. I did have another question come through as well. The question was basically, if you have, you're contributing to your 401k, you're contributing to your Roth IRA, your traditional IRA, and your health savings account, and you still have extra funds, can you allocate that towards like an app, say, for example, Robinhood? Is the question?
Yeah, yeah, and that I guess I did forget to put on that flow chart, the last one. Your taxable account, you can put as much money as you possibly want in your taxable account. There's, you know, that's, if you have excess money to continue to invest, you're doing awesome. You know, off the top of my head, I think it's for a single person, it would be around 25 to 28,000 is how much you'd have to contribute to max out those tax advantage accounts. So if you're putting more than that into investments, you're doing amazing. And yeah, I'd recommend Robinhood, or consider a Vanguard account, or Fidelity, or any other of those brokerages.
Perfect. Thanks, Shane. And then there was another question here. Sorry, thought about another question. How would you want to invest in farmland agriculture aside from a traditional real estate?
Yeah, so you'd probably want to look for a real estate investment trust that specifically invests in ag ground. So, you know, those real estate investment trusts, they will have subcategories that they might invest in. So some might just only invest in apartment complexes. Some might only invest in industrial real estate. I'm sure there's some out there that'll only invest in ag land. So you could just buy a piece of that, and then you'd have exposure to ag land without having to go buy a physical piece of agricultural ground.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that, Shane. And Adam, thank you for all the questions, and to everyone else that participated and commented in this live chat. We really appreciate that. And we will be doing a drawing for some free swag for the involvement from that standpoint. So just really appreciate you guys being involved, and looking forward to future sessions in that regard. Other than that, I just want to say thanks again for everyone being in attendance today. I want to say thank Shane again for being our speaker. We will also post this on our Alumni YouTube page. And then let's see. Oh, I had another question. I always want to serve the demographics here, and we have it for a reason. So just one final question here, and then we'll sign off for the day here. Thought about a business idea that's been in the back of my mind. How would one become a lending facility?
You know, that'll really depend on what kind of lending you're doing. A lot of times there's like regulatory bodies that manage different people who lend, and they have their own standards for how you can become a lender. And you know, when you become a lender of money, you get regulated to death. So that's one thing to maybe consider on your business idea. It'd be a lot of regulation waiting through, but
the comment was such as personal loans or credit consolidation, not banking. So
yeah, I mean, you can find, you know, legal loan docs online, I'm sure, that allows you to lend personally to another person. You know, it might be hard to perfect your security interests, so you might be unsecured when you lend to somebody, but I'm sure you can find some of those documents online to help you lend to somebody else.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Shane, for that explanation. And just again, thank you to everyone so much for the help today with the attendance and the comments and the questions. We really appreciate it. And, you know, and with that, enjoy your afternoon and go Mavs. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.